Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Eleni Meletiadou and I'm here to present a research study we conducted with my friend and colleague Bettina Coleman-Scholes. Basically, we explored the use of assessment for learning strategies, that is peer assessment and self-assessment, with final year students to improve their dissertation journey, but also to engage them as partners in learning, that is to develop their autonomy at the Guildhall School of Business and Law.
Yes, thank you, Eleni. I will talk you through the content of the presentation. So we will talk about, Eleni will be discussing the background to the study and the research that has been done in the field and describe the study itself that we did. I will talk you through the research design and also the instruments that we've designed for the self-assessment and the peer assessment and the kind of analysis that we've used. Thereafter, I will be discussing the self-assessment or the results of the self-assessments, and Eleni will be talking about the peer assessment. She will also discuss the preliminary findings and the drawbacks, and I will come back and mention the limitations of the study, and she will also talk about the recommendations. Okay, and I'll hand back to Eleni. Thank you.
So let me now present the background of this study. So basically, writing is a process learned through consistent writing, assessment, and feedback, and also presupposes that students know what good writing is. So assessment for learning is an approach to teaching and learning that creates feedback, which is then used to improve students' performance. Students become more involved in the learning process, and from this, they gain confidence in what they are expected to learn and to what standard, according, of course, to Black and William. Also, using self-assessment allows students to detect what they need to do to improve their own work. There has been a lot of research into peer assessment and self-assessment. So these numerous researchers and testing experts have accepted much attention to learners' involvement both in the assessment and the learning process. What they say is that they legitimize peer assessment and self-assessment tasks as suitable means by which educators can foster students' self-regulation, metacognition, and higher order learning skills to become aware of their limitation as students set feasible goals for themselves. So students entering a higher education institution are progressing from pedagogy to andragogy, where independent learning starts. So mastering experiences allows learners to build their self-confidence and their skills. Learners are enabled to learn more about themselves and evaluate their strengths and challenges during the self-assessment procedure. And that appreciation is a significant part of their realization of themselves as competent writers and independent learning. So let me offer you a brief description of the study. So the present research examined the impact of peer assessment and self-assessment on final year students' attitude and motivation to write at GSBL. So students were engaged as partners in learning as they were asked to take responsibility for their own and their peers' learning. Let us keep in mind that higher education institutions are increasingly concerned about adopting inclusive teaching and assessment practices to cater for the needs of multilingual and multicultural students who should work together and succeed first in their academic context and later in an increasingly complex workplace which has high expectations from individuals who wish to find career-enhancing positions and succeed in their professional lives. So as higher education institutions increasingly stress autonomous and collaborative learning, lecturers tend to use more collaborative activities that actively engage students in learning to write. So basically the impact of constructivism has also initiated a change in how assessment is viewed by researchers and also practitioners who currently regard it as an integral part of learning as they try to engage learners in both learning and assessment activities. And this is exactly what we did in the current study.
Hey, it's me again. Thank you very much, Eleni. So I will be talking about the research design. We had in total one module that is a final year dissertation module, and it runs across 5 different courses, which includes the business management course, the biggest course in the business school, and business management and marketing, international business management, and so on and so forth. We had in total 116 registered students, but unfortunately not everyone engaged in the module, so you can see that on the responses. But nevertheless, we had 7 tutors that were actually teaching on this module, so it's a fairly big module. And as part of the module, we expected students to submit a draft before the assignments are due. So there are 2 assignments that are due in December and in May. And so submit a draft, and as part of the draft, they would also get, they would be expected to complete a self-assessment form and have discussion with the tutor as to their progress on their dissertation or on the assignment. So their first assignment is a proposal and literature review, which is due in December, and the second assignment was the full dissertation. And students had to, as part of the self-assessment, they then had to, as part of the assessment, they had to then complete a survey, which we, based on the self-assessment, which we then analyzed. The second thing is the peer assessment survey, which we did an activity as part of in the classroom, where students were actually given a completed dissertation from previous years to mark and to give feedback on and to provide feedback. And they were also asked if they would like peer assessment or peer feedback on their own assignments, and the results will be given later on. So this was part of in-class activity in February. And they completed the survey, which was mainly done pen and paper. And as you can see from the responses, we didn't have as many responses on the peer assessment because attendance was not as we would like it to be. So we had on the self-assessment, on the first one, we had 70 valid responses. On the second one, we had 72 valid responses. On the peer assessment, we had 37 valid responses. Now, to introduce the instruments, we had on the self-assessment, obviously we wanted to make it not too onerous because students don't like to spend too much time on completing surveys. So the self-assessment had 8 questions that were measured on a 5-point Likert scale and 3 open-ended questions. And you can see the questions here on the right-hand side. The peer assessment had 10 questions with 5-point Likert scales and 5 open-ended questions. This data that we collected was analyzed using descriptive data and frequency and percentages to understand the quantitative responses. So we analyzed the Likert scales, and you will see the results in a moment. And for the open questions, we used thematic analysis to identify prominent themes in open questions. Now to discuss or to show you the findings of the self-assessment survey. Apologies for the busy slide, but I just wanted to show you as much data as I possibly could. So overall, it was clearly visible that students actually did enjoy completing the self-assessment. And the questions responses, so on the Likert scale 1 to 5, 1 was strongly agree and 5 was strongly disagree. You can see that the most enjoyed feature of the self-assessment was discussing reflections with the tutor. So they very much benefited or enjoyed speaking to the tutor and discussing their progress and their topic with the tutor. As you can see, there's the standard deviation. So the mean is 1.89, which is on agree, and the standard deviation is fairly low. The second results that you can see, which 2 is the mean for the second self-assessment and 0.89 is the standard deviation for the second assessment, second self-assessment, sorry. So it was still very much, they still very much agreed with that. They liked reflecting on the performance so far and also plan the next step. And overall, also we found that they enjoyed completing the self-assessment form. Obviously, some were more enjoying it more than others. Overall, in the open questions, what they mentioned of what it is that they actually benefited from is they suggested that, so more than half, actually, almost 2/3, suggested that by completing the self-assessment, it helped them to reflect and develop in their progress, in the assignment as well, and help them to plan. And it's interesting to see the plan was a higher response in the second assessment. So they clearly enjoyed, whilst completing the dissertation, the benefit of needing to reflect on the self-assessment, so and to help their planning. For the first assessment, self-assessment, they also said it was good to have a different perspective, and it also increased their motivation and kept them more engaged. Some suggested also that it has a wider reach than the module itself. So, and some of them suggested that they would have liked to see this in other modules as well. As you can see on the top, it says, no, please keep it. That's what it means. Rather, I advise this should stay permanent. It has been beneficial to me continually. And some suggest that they are actually writing the self-assessments, or they're using the self-assessments for other modules. The challenges for our students were that our students seemingly are not used to actually talking about themselves and talking about or thinking about their own progress. So as you can see from the quote on the top, I find it awkward talking about myself. Some students are just used to being given a task to do and just get on with it, do the task and move on, rather than actually reflecting on how they've got through the task and what it is that they've actually learned from it. So the challenge for some of them was scoring themselves honestly. And that was very interesting to see because like you can see in the bottom left hand corner, it's hard for them to, because we are very much used, or students are very much used to just talk about the benefits and how good they are, if they are, and market themselves rather than actually reflecting and also identifying what it is that they might need to improve on. So it says, I have the ambition to achieve a good grade in the module, but knew I wasn't doing my best to achieve it. It was challenging for me to admit it. So again, it's for some of them, is it actually an eye-opener? Like it says here, the most challenging part is when the lecturer gives the responses as well and makes you truly understand if what you think of your job is correct or wrong. It's truly eye-opening. So I've left here a few more quotes for you to read through because I think they are very insightful, and it helps us to understand our students better, and maybe something that we can work more with and get students to actually maybe get them to reflect from the very beginning. So as you can see, this as challenges, the second challenge is as well is stick to the plan. So they find it very useful to plan ahead, but to stick to the plan obviously is challenging, and we know that the most recent periods of time have been some challenges with regards to our surroundings, really, COVID and so on and so forth. And reflecting was very challenging for our students as well. But we can talk about this for future recommendations. And now I'm handing back to Eleni. Thank you.
Taking into consideration our findings regarding peer assessment, we can detect a number of benefits for students. So students have indicated that peer assessment has made them understand what is expected from the assignment. So they were able to understand better the instructions of the assignment as well as the assessment criteria. This is something that has been previously found by other researchers as well. Also, they benefited from assessing and provided feedback to their peers. So there were benefits in their role as assessors and as assessees. Moreover, peer assessment motivated to do their best because they knew that one of their peers would have a look at their work. So this sense of an audience really encouraged them to spend more time on their work. Moreover, they thought that peer assessment is very useful as it provided them with additional feedback, that of their peers, on top of their tutor. Let's keep in mind that peer assessment is not to substitute lecture assessment. Also, they were able, as I said, to understand better the marking criteria as they had to use them to provide feedback to their peers. And they also said that they recommend their peers and other fellow students to participate in this kind of exercise, as it helps them reflect on their work and that of their peers. And definitely they said that they thought that peer assessment was not a waste of time, as it had a number of benefits for them, both as assessors and as assessees. Of course, there were drawbacks as well. For example, not every student was able to see the benefits or buys into it. And we can see that this was also the case more with self-assessment, as self-assessment really needs more time so that students can develop their self-assessment skills. Let's keep into consideration these are level 6 students. I think that the use of peer assessment and self-assessment should start from foundation year or level 4, so that students are able to slowly develop their peer assessment skills first and self-assessment skills later on. Also, some students said that this is not suitable for all modules, okay, as they needed resources, and also it also depends on the schedule of the modules. Of course, students are not really the best people to know how we can implement peer assessment in our modules. Um, Also, students indicated that, of course, it is too late to start at level 6. I agree that this is true. I think that students should start developing these skills right from the beginning of their studies, or even before that, for example, in secondary education. But definitely they need to develop their peer assessment and self-assessment skills, because these are valuable skills for any future business manager. And let's keep in mind that these students, most of these students are studying to become business managers.
Okay, thank you very much, Eleni. Now, going back to the limitations, obviously we looked at the very short-term effects of our study. So we asked them to do a task and respond in a survey fairly straightforward very quickly after. I mean, the self-assessment maybe could have taken a couple of weeks, but apart from that, the peer assessment, for example, was straight after the activity. So we can't really talk about long-term effects. So it would be good to maybe analyze it in future studies and see how long these kind of effects, these positive effects that we've identified, actually last. It would be also good to see self-assessment and peer assessment used more widely in other modules, so undergraduate and postgraduate studies as well, to just get a feel for if, I don't know, postgraduate students actually respond differently to it than undergraduate students. And also another thing that we noticed is obviously some of the challenges that students found is that reflection was difficult for them. So it might be useful to start them. I know we do it in some modules, but maybe to do it in a more targeted fashion and a more organized fashion to get students to actually reflect from the very beginning, from level 4, on their skills and on their learning and so on and so forth. So it would be very interesting to see if that makes an an impact, because like it says earlier, it's very hard for students to talk about themselves and to actually see themselves as an additional entity to the learning process, and not just be very target focused on their results and on their assignments and so on. Obviously, it will be also good to analyze the grades, and we will be doing that later. Unfortunately, we didn't have enough time to do that yet, but to see also the impact on the grades of the self-assessment and the peer assessment, if that made any difference. And it would be also good to have more lecturers involved. So we had 7 tutors involved in the whole in this module, yeah, it would be interesting to see how other lecturers actually organize it, or what other ideas they have. And I'll pass back to Eleni. Thank you.
So let me offer a number of recommendations for that. So I believe that the focus of the future studies should explore more ways in which students should assume responsibility for their own learning and assessment and be willing to take risks, make mistakes, and ultimately improve their skills. It is imperative for educators to familiarize themselves with the knowledge pertaining self-assessment and peer assessment, excuse me, before using it with their students. Also, students and educators need preparation, not only formative assessment techniques, but also in the self-regulation and psychological theories underpinning them, if students are to become effective assessors of their own learning. Let us also bear in mind that without a supportive formative assessment policy framework, it is unlikely that pedagogically oriented assessment techniques like peer assessment and self-assessment will gain much traction. Additionally, certain self-assessment practices may not be viable in all classrooms. Good classroom relationships between, for example, the lecturer, the students, and their peers appear, in this case, paramount. Without a classroom philosophy that views mistakes as an opportunity for learning and that encourages honest reflection, peer assessment and self-assessment accuracy is likely to be compromised. Therefore, lecturers must think strategically about when and how to incorporate self-assessment into their classroom. There are some classes where, due to classroom dynamics, self-assessment may not be viable, for example. In other scenarios, this may best utilized later in the year, only after positive relationships have been built. So these are some of the things that educators who wish to implement peer assessment and self-assessment as assessment for learning strategies, they need to keep in mind these recommendations.
So yes, that is the end of our presentation. Thank you very much. If you have any questions or any comments, we would very much like to hear from you. These are our email addresses. So Elena's is there and mine is there as well. I left you here another quote just to show you again some of the comments of our students and how difficult they find it to actually judge their own work and to reflect. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation. And like I said, any questions, please don't hesitate. Thank you. Bye-bye.